Life is full of tough choices. Which home to buy and where? Go to college or pick up a trade? Place your loved ones in a care facility or care for them at home? Many of us have to make these choices, but some, believe it or not, say they're given the choice to stay in heaven or return to a dying body. Why would anyone want to come back to this world, leaving a place so wonderful, so peaceful, closer to God, as some would describe it? Anita Moorjani, author, speaker, and near-death experiencer, has an answer to that question. I'm Sue Biamba, and this is Mysteries of Life. Anita Moorjani has become a near-death experience, or NDE sensation. Videos of her online, easily garnering over 10 million views altogether. Her 2012 memoir, Dying to Be Me, details her battle with cancer, her profound NDE in Hong Kong, and why she chose to return to her ill body. It became a New York Times bestseller. Her story is easy to find, but I wanted to meet Anita, a pursuit that took me out of the Big Apple and to the West Coast, to hear more about her return from heaven and the medical miracle she would then experience. I would like to ask you about your near-death experience. Can you briefly tell us what happened?
So I had end-stage cancer. It was lymphoma, which is cancer of the lymph glands, and it had metastasized, so that means it had spread throughout my lymphatic system, all over my body. It started from the base of my skull and spread all around my neck and under my arms and in my chest, all the way down to my abdomen. So I had tumors, many of them the size of golf balls, all around my body. And as it had spread, it spread over a period of 4 years, this happened. So by the end of 4 years, I was so weak that my body had stopped absorbing nutrition. My lungs were filled with fluid. I had these open skin lesions where toxins were coming out of my skin, and I weighed about 85 pounds. I was like a skeleton, but because my lungs were filled with fluid, if I lay flat, I would be choking on my own fluid. So I was in so much pain, and I feared everything. Like, I feared the cancer. I was fearing the treatment. I was fearing death. So life was really, really uncomfortable. I was in so much pain and so much discomfort. And I was fighting. I had been fighting for 4 years, fighting for my life, fighting to stay alive. But on the night of February the 1st, 2006, I stopped fighting.
Anita says she had realized that the cancer outmatched her, that even death couldn't be worse than the disease. There are no images of Anita in her worst state. What she could show me were photographs taken before the disease peaked.
This is on one of my birthdays with me and Danny. So here you get an idea of how skinny I was, but I was actually even worse than this, when I refused to have photos taken of me. I couldn't even stand up, and I was connected to tubes, and so this is not even me at my worst.
Were you skinnier?
Even skinnier. As it got worse and worse, it got very, very uncomfortable. I was always gasping for air. I just couldn't get enough air in my lungs. And even if I would lie down, it felt as if I was choking. So my head would have to be propped up, and so that I would have clear airwaves, but still, it always felt like I just wasn't getting enough air. It was so uncomfortable.
Just a day after Anita had given up the fight in her heart, she didn't wake up, going into a coma. Anita says her husband Danny, who was caring for her at home, was frantic, taking her to the hospital. Doctors gave Danny terrible news. Anita's organs were shutting down one by one. Anita would not come back, and it was time to say goodbye the doctor said.
But unbeknownst to everybody around me, even though my physical body was in a coma, I was aware of everything that was happening around me. I had felt as though I had left my body, and I felt incredible. I felt really light, and I felt free, and all the pain was gone, and the fear was gone. I don't remember ever feeling this way, ever, not in my physical life. And I felt a feeling of like being bathed in a sensation of what I call unconditional love. It was just a sensation of pure and divine love. I was just bathed in that feeling, and it just felt really, really incredible. For the first time, I felt I didn't even have to prove myself to be deserving or worthy of the love. I was loved just because I existed. I was surrounded by beings. I call them spiritual beings. Some of them I recognize from this life. One of them was my dad, who had died 10 years prior. Another one was my best friend, who had died 2 years prior from cancer. And it was as if they were there to greet me. I felt that I was in this state of clarity where I understood why I was here. I actually understood why I had got sick, and I understood how it was that I came to be lying on that hospital bed that day, dying. I understood how all the thoughts and decisions and choices I had made through my life had led me to that point.
Anita says that eventually, in this mystical, painless world where she no longer was the victim of a disease, she felt as though she had a choice to make: return to her body or stay in paradise.
I didn't want to come back.
Fair enough. But before any decision was made, spiritual beings and her father, who was in that dimension with her, had something to tell her.
They were all encouraging me to come back. They were telling me, particularly my dad was telling me that your work isn't done yet. You haven't fulfilled your purpose yet. And you still have things to do, and it's not your time. That was the main thing. They said it was not your time. But I didn't feel they were forcing me. I felt it was still my choice. But I also felt that they were encouraging me to come back, and it was like if I didn't come back, I would be missing out on something. And it felt like I had wanted to come here to accomplish certain things, to fulfill certain intentions, and I hadn't fulfilled them yet. But I was still hesitant because I didn't want to come back into a sick and dying body. And then I realized that now that I understood why I had got sick, I was going to get the opportunity to actually reverse that. I was going to get an opportunity to heal those reasons. And what I understood was that now that I know the reasons, and now that I know what it is that I need to come back and do and be, that my body would heal very, very quickly. And it was with that understanding that I made the choice to come back. And when I made that choice, I heard my dad say to me, now that you know the truth, go back and live your life fearlessly.
What happened to Anita after that was nothing short of a miracle. A day later, as her body lay on the hospital bed in a coma, her consciousness returned, and those golf ball-sized tumors would disappear within weeks, she says.
This was very shortly after, and I went out for dinner with my mom and my brother. That was on my birthday, and then this is like a couple of months later after my hair started growing back. So this is after coming out of hospital, after a few months, as I got stronger and stronger. And this one was taken about 9 months later, 9 months after the near-death experience. And people would see me and they would get really shocked. They were like, we thought you were dying. So,
Wow.
You look absolutely like you look like nothing happened to you at all.
I was so happy and elated because I felt so connected to this other world. And I just wanted everybody to know what awaits them. I was euphoric. It was a very, very happy time for me.
So, what just happened to Anita? What caused the rapid recovery? In Dying to Be Me, Anita writes about an oncologist named Dr. Peter Koh who contacted her, interested in her case, and read her medical report. He said, "Whichever way I look at it, you should be dead." Dr. Koh gave a summary of her case, saying she was released from the ICU a few days after awakening from her near-death experience. By February 27th, cancer was no longer detected, and her skin ulcers had healed on their own, without surgery. Oncologist hematologist T.K. Chan, a doctor who had treated Anita, told a Hong Kong newspaper that Anita's recovery was remarkable, but felt it was the chemotherapy drugs and an emergency procedure that had drained fluid from her lungs. Dr. Koh also considers her recovery remarkable. However, he doesn't attribute it to the chemo. He says he can't. He speculates that something either switched off the mutated genes from expressing or signaled them to a programmed cell death. But what that was is unknown to him. Anita, however, says she knows what happened.
When you made the choice to come back, you said you knew that you would heal very quickly.
Yes, I
even
did.
though you were in a very bad physical state. How did you know that?
I knew that because I was in this state of clarity on that side. And I could see that if I made this choice to come back, that all my organs would start functioning. At that time when I was there, I didn't know what my purpose was. But my dad wanted me to just go and live my life fearlessly. And he wanted me to know that my purpose would unfold. And let me tell you a little bit about the kind of person I was. I was someone who was a people pleaser. I feared religion, I feared disapproval, I feared bad karma. And so I was always going out of my way to be a good person, but from a place of fear. I've never had acceptance from my dad. My dad was not particularly, he was not particularly sensitive or loving. He was very typical of our culture of that time. He was a very hands-off dad. He relied on my mother for everything. My mom was the one who would take care of the kids. And my dad was very, very strict. And so I was always worried about not having his approval. And so everything I did, my behavior, everything was to win his approval. And I realized, even when you think you're doing the right thing, if your entire life is based on fear-based decisions, the fear itself is unhealthy for you. The fear itself causes stress and inflammation in your body. You see, it wasn't the cancer that was killing me. It was me that was killing myself by not living my life to the fullest. The cancer actually saved my life.
As mentioned previously, Anita says she chose to return to her body because of an unfulfilled purpose. Dr. Jeffrey Long, a leading near-death researcher, has listed the decision to return a commonly reported element in NDEs. He writes on his website, the decision to return to the physical body may be voluntary or involuntary. If voluntary, the decision to return is often made following discussion with spiritual beings and is often associated with unfinished life responsibilities. If voluntary, feelings of sadness, loss, depression, and anxiety may follow. Despite cases of negative emotions following an involuntary return, Dr. Long says people typically experience positive changes in their lives after the NDEs, finding life more meaningful and significant. Another case of a positive return is that of author and NDEer Jeffrey Olson. In the previous episode, he described to us a terrible car accident he and his family were in. His wife and one of his sons died. But during his NDE, he had a discussion with his deceased wife, gorgeous and radiant, out of her body.
She was communicating to me and saying, Jeff, you can't stay, you've got to go back, you've got to go back. And we literally had a conversation. We had a conversation about if I stayed with her, Spencer would be orphaned. I knew that Griffin had passed and he was not in this exchange. It was just she and I. But we literally made a choice. We made the decision that I would go back. And we have no idea how powerful our thoughts are. Because in me choosing to go back, suddenly I found myself moving about a hospital, a busy level 1 trauma center.
Others, like author, researcher, and NDEer Dr. Yvonne Cason, say they returned to their bodies in order to further serve the divine or the creator. Dr. Cason, in our previous interview, said 2 beings of light had appeared before her, giving her a choice of whether to reincarnate as a baby or return to her injured body.
My heart just instantly responded, "Oh, Masters, please guide me. What is the higher choice? I want to do God's will." And then what happened was, so lovingly, so sweetly, they telepathically communicated to me, "It will be more difficult, but to return to the injured body." And without asking any questions, just from a complete state of trust, my heart responded, "I accept." And boom, it was faster than thought, because it was between the I and the accept. It was then, with a gasp of air, I found myself waking up in my dead body, lying on the ground, starting to breathe life back into my body.
Some practitioners of Falun Gong, also called Falun Dafa, a spiritual practice centered on principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, share their NDEs on minghui.org. They're able to submit their stories on this website anonymously, as the practice and its adherents are persecuted in China by the Chinese Communist Party. A Dafa practitioner in 2008 reported that on one occasion, police officers had beaten him with batons until he passed out. This was for refusing to renounce Falun Dafa, he said. At the time, my consciousness left my body. In my mind, I thought that I had not yet fulfilled my historical mission. My consciousness then came back to my body, which was already cold. The practitioner said that his historical mission or purpose is to save sentient beings. Some NDErs know exactly why they want to return. To others, like Anita, the purpose unfolds over time, just as her father said it would. Mysteries of Life will return shortly.
We live in a fear-based world. I understood that really my illness was caused by fear. It was caused by fear of everything, fear of not being good enough, fear of being disliked, fear of disappointing people, fear of failing, fear of cancer. I had tremendous fear of cancer. So every decision I made in my life came from a place of fear. In other words, I make this choice because I'm afraid of making the wrong choice, instead of making a decision from a place of love and passion and joy. Over time, I realized that my purpose is actually to alleviate fear in people. One of the biggest fears that people have is fear of the afterlife. And I want people to know that they don't have to fear the afterlife, because I think that this fear of the afterlife drives a lot of people's behaviors here in this life. And it makes them live an unfulfilled life, having this fear. I believe that when we're actually born with full knowledge, but it gets conditioned out of us during our lives. We're born fearless. We're born knowing that we're connected, but it gets conditioned out of us. And I feel that what I learned on the other side, I just have this drive to share with people that your lives would be so much better if you knew this. And that's why I have this determination to share it with people, because I think it would make them happier and healthier.
Dr. Brian Walker, who was Anita's family doctor when she had the NDE, has said that Anita's case proposes a challenge to the whole of medical society. He goes on to say about her condition, there's this impossible cancer which suddenly resolves, and if you're not asking the question why, then you're not dealing with the real problem. The sciences have come to accept that emotional stress and thoughts can contribute to health problems. In fact, research is finding potential links between stress and cancer. Some studies have even concluded that stress may be able to worsen cancer, which supports Anita's message of what fear did to her.
And how do you live in such a way that you are not living in fear?
So the way that I live is that I limit my input of media. I limit my input of the noise from the physical world. What has happened is that having an experience like that has taught me that there is a whole other unseen world. This unseen world is filled with beloved beings, guides, my own soul, my higher self, that are there with me, supporting me, guiding me. And they're trying to communicate with me all the time. They're always there. We all have our own, but we don't always listen and we can't always hear. And the problem is the noise from this physical world, and when I say noise, I mean the information that we are bombarded with every day, all day, whether it's from the internet, whether it's from TV, the information that's bombarding us, a lot of it is fear-based information. Most of it is, because fear is what sells. And so this information that's bombarding us grips our energy, it grips our mind, and it has this hold on us that there's no room for us to open up and let the messages from the other side come through. We have a soul and we have a physical body. And what happens is when your physical body doesn't recognize that you are a soul, and when the physical body thinks that all there is the physical, this three-dimensional, five-sensory world, and you get all your information only from other physical beings and other physical things like media and so on, then actually you're getting very limited information. But having that experience showed me without a doubt that there is a whole other part of me that's much greater than my physical body, much greater, and it's connected to something much greater than this three-dimensional world.
How do you specifically tune into that realm?
So there's many ways it can happen. And for me, one of the things I always insist is that I have to live by the ocean. And literally, after I had the near-death experience, I realized for me the ocean does it. And it's different for different people. Some people might say it's the mountains. Some people might say it's just the open fields. For me, the ocean does it. It makes me feel closer to the source, to the universe. We have to take periods of silence. Focus on what you love. Focus on what's healthy, not what's unhealthy. Focus on how to improve your health, not how to avoid illness. That's my mission, is to tell people that that's the true path to health and wellness and happiness and joy and all of these things. The other thing I want to say is that my dad is the one who instilled the fear in me throughout my life. It was his approval I always wanted. It was his temper that I feared. And he was the one that instilled the fear in me during life. But in death, he was the one that set me free from that fear. He was the one that said, go and live your life fearlessly. And he said, that's all you have to do, and you will see your purpose unfold before you.
Speaking with Anita gave me a better idea of why people come back, sometimes back to a troubled life. A word that comes to mind is sacrifice. You could say that what Anita made is a kind of sacrifice that quite literally involves postponing a return to heaven. And for what? to help others by spreading a message of courage, spirituality, and love. I think my trip out west has already been a success, but I've got more stops to make here. Anita has now had multiple books published. The latest one is called Sensitive is the New Strong: The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. It's been great having you with us. We've still got big questions, so we hope to see you next time on Mysteries of Life.